Hey everyone, and welcome to the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. We are 1 week away from the NFL Draft.
We are 7 days.
It's exciting. Yeah, a week is 7 days. It's exciting.
It is. It's really one of the most fun weeks of the year. That the build up is a little much, but the actual draft, I mean, it's amazing seeing just a new roster take shape. It's going to be a lot of fun.
The build-up is fun, though, and I know that by this point in the mock draft season, there's a little fatigue. I get that. Like we've talked so much about this prospect and that prospect, and it ends up like creating these narratives that may or may not be true about the class or the order players will go. But that's kind of what makes draft night so much fun, is that we spent all this time going over possibilities, and none of them are going to be right.
Well, I got Corey Simon right in 2000, so.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying you won't get one right, but like
I know what you're saying.
There will be surprises on draft night.
Absolutely, there always are.
I figured today we would go through. We have a bunch of questions to get to a little bit later. We do want to go through some favorite draft memories both of us have from covering the draft. You've covered it longer than You've seen the draft change. It's kind of been the same for me since I've covered the league. But we'll go through some of those draft memories. And we'll also play with a mock draft simulator. If fans haven't done that, it's a fun thing to do. I've been doing a few fan-sourced mock drafts with that simulator. It's been a lot of fun. But first, I wanted to go through the latest mock draft roundup, some options for the Eagles at 32, and just see, out of the options that we see listed most frequently, which ones you think make the most sense.
Sounds good.
All right, let's start with, I think the name that's become the most popular one by far for the Eagles. I've seen it a bunch, and it really picked up steam a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, is Walter Nolan from Ole Miss. It checks a lot of boxes. It makes a lot of sense.
It does, and I think there's a high probability he's the guy. Not because everyone's projecting him, but because it just makes sense. It makes sense in a lot of ways. I think we mentioned last week that when GMs say they never draft for need, it's not really true. I mean, they draft for need within a certain group of positions, and certainly there's a need there. And he looks like he's going to be a really good player, so it does make sense. And I think he'll be there at 32.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that because, like, he's a disruptive interior defensive lineman. Like, those guys don't always last to the end of the first round. It's very possible he's there, but you also have to be ready for the possibility he's not there, right? I mean, I think so many of these mock drafts, he's just the guy. And I think you're right. Like, if he's there at 32, it makes a lot of sense. There's a good chance they'd pick him, but I also think there's a decent chance he's not available.
Yeah, no, that's certainly true. And I think he's one of those guys where there's a pretty wide gap where he could go. There's diverging opinions on him, and we don't know what teams think. But I think there's more than a 50% chance he'll be on the board when they pick.
Okay. Nolan is still 21, 6'3.5", 300 pounds, super productive in his 1 year at Ole Miss. He transferred from Texas A&M, but he had that 1 year at Ole Miss. And it was funny. I had someone respond to me on Twitter because he was a fan pick in my latest fan source mock draft, saying all of his highlights are plays he almost made, which isn't exactly accurate. He did make a lot of plays, but I think what's showing up is like he has the ability to penetrate and to create pressure. Yeah, does he have to finish a little better at times? Sure, but like that's not only him when we're talking about this draft.
Yeah, you also feel pretty good about any young interior lineman coming in. We talk about drafting O-linemen and the Jeff Stoutland factor, but I'll tell you what, Clinton Hurt has been so impressive since he got here, what he's done with his guys. He made Milton some money, made Jalen some money he hasn't got yet, but will get. And so I think he's a really good technician, a really good teacher. The players love him. They play hard for him. He's a motivator. So I think when you draft that position, you feel really good about a guy being able to take the next step and develop as a player.
I'm glad you brought up Clint Hurt because he got a little overshadowed last year, I think, by the secondary and Christian Parker and the job he did. But Clint Hurt, and even Bobby King to some effect at linebacker, but Clint Hurt, you're right, with those interior guys did a really good job. We saw improvement from Millen. We saw improvement from Jalen Carter. I think we saw some from Jordan Davis, and we certainly saw it from Moro Ujima. So, like, everyone he had, even Thomas Booker gave them some really quality snaps early in the year. So everyone he had in that room with him got better. So it is intriguing to put this type of player with him.
Yeah, and you can tell when players talk about a position coach without being asked. Like, it's one thing if you ask Jordan Davis, hey, you know, Clint Hurt, what's he meant to you? But when they bring it up themselves without being asked, which all those guys did all the time, you can tell how big a factor he was in their development.
Yeah. Also, the most terrifying coach they have in that building. So
he's the nicest guy. Yeah, he
is a very nice guy. I've noticed that some defensive line coaches, like the ones the Eagles have had, have been like kind of big, gruff guys, but they have a soft dynamic to them where like they're a little cuddly. Do you get that from Clint Hurt?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd use the word cuddly, but that's
and I hope he doesn't hear me hear that. I didn't say that. if that gets back to you, Clint, that was Reuben Frank
all over the place. You know that. Yeah, I think, and I think all the best coaches have that hard ass personality, and then it's the good cop bad cop thing with one person. It's just you can get through to a guy when you need to in one way, but when you have to be tough, you can do that too. And Clint Hurt certainly has both those ways of getting through to players in his arsenal.
We mentioned, on previous pods that this is a really deep class of defensive tackles by most experts' accounts. I think there probably is a little bit of a drop off, but I also think you can get one in a mid round, in day 2 or early day 3. How do you view that? Because I think teams view that differently, and it certainly depends on the individual players. But if the drop off isn't as great, do you then go for a different position in the first round because or at least you hope there's going to be a really quality player that dips a little lower than you're expecting because of how deep this class is?
Yeah, and that's something you have to weigh. Each position each year is a different case, but certainly when the first round is loaded, it's going to push good guys there might be a third round pick who normally would be a second round pick, and that's good value. You get that guy in the third round. Milton Williams was a 3, and look at him now. So I think that's a position where, most of the good guys the Eagles have had been pretty high picks: Jerome, Corey Simon, Jalen Carter. But you can find those guys certainly, and it's just a matter of weighing, like how far deep into the, whether it's day 2, is a quality guy going to fall, and how big is the drop off? You have to weigh all that. I think that's something Howie's really good at.
Yeah. And there are other defensive tackles who might make sense in the first round. Walter Nolan's been the one that I feel like everyone's talked about. Derek Harmon is a guy to me that, gosh, if he somehow is available to them at 32, that would be a huge win.
Yeah, now that I don't think is going to happen, but hey, you never know. They've had guys slide to them.
In each of the last 2 years, they've had guys who we never thought. And that's the important thing to remember is, like, what is realistic? I don't know, because last year, was it realistic to get Quinion Mitchell at 22? No. 2 years ago, was it realistic to get Nolan Smith at 30? No. So, like, what is realistic and what isn't? That changes when the draft actually starts.
Yeah. That's what makes it fun.
It does. And I think that's important to remember. Like, we're having fun with mock drafts, right? Like, I know some curmudgeonly people don't like mock drafts, but I don't know, they're fun. It's Do you not like mock drafts?
They're not my favorite thing.
Okay. Why not?
Because they're wrong. They're inherently wrong.
Okay.
So you're basically publishing all this information that's wrong.
I don't think anyone's taking it as information.
But I mean, there's something fun about it, and certainly, I think everybody, as soon as we publish a mock draft, everybody's going, who did they pick for the Eagles? And it's always fun to see how many you got right, if any. I'm usually pretty good in the first 2 or 3 picks. I kind of have a drop off after that. I don't know. If you take it for what it is, it's a, for entertainment purposes only, right?
Yeah, and that's what we're all doing here, right?
Yeah,
that's what football is. So
it's not my favorite thing, but hey, I made good progress this morning on my next week's mock, and I'll throw a little tease out there. I got Cam Ward going first.
Oh, look at you, really bucking the trends there.
I think that's going to really help page views.
Let me go to another name that's kind of come up a lot. Donovan Ezeiruaku, edge rusher from Boston College, South Jersey kid. I feel like it's come up less recently because a lot of people think he'll be gone by the time the Eagles pick at 32, but I'm not so sure. There are a lot of edge rushers who could go in this first round. And I think edge rusher, maybe even more than defensive tackle and some other defensive positions, is really about flavor. It's like, what does this team want in an edge rusher? And they're all so different. I wouldn't be shocked if he's there at 32.
Yeah, that's a tough position to project. And I thought you made a good point in your piece the other day about, I think somebody had them trading up for one of the edges.
Mm-hmm.
And your thing is like, why would you, like, unless you really, really like that one guy over, there's really a group of guys who look like they're going to be really good players. Unless you don't like most of that group and you really, really like, why would you trade up when you're going to get, you have a chance to get a similar caliber player later without giving up picks? And that's why I don't think he'll trade up for an edge. I just don't.
Did I make that point?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was you. It was, but
because I think there are some players who are worth trading up for in this draft at that position.
Well, Abdul Carter. I mean, he's not.
Obviously not. You're not going to get in that range. But Michael Williams is a guy to me that will not be there when they draft at 32. He's someone I would be interested in trading up to get. If he starts to get into the 20s, that would be intriguing to me.
It take a lot to get from 32. I mean, at least, obviously the low 20s, but I don't know if Howie wants to use the resources. He's got some picks to get into the high 20s or the low 20s as far as numerically. But yeah, I think he can get really good value later. He might be an exception, certainly. The Eagles are there have been 21 first-round picks from South Jersey over the years from 14 different high schools, which I thought was really interesting. There have been 117 South Jersey players drafted. I made a list.
It's unlike you to do that.
That was really interesting.
Rankoka's the last first rounder.
It was that offensive lineman from Camden, Ruiz.
Oh, Cesar Ruiz.
I think he's with the Saints now, I believe. Yeah. And before that was Hassan Reddick, actually, from Haddon Heights. But it's interesting to see how 51 different high schools in South Jersey have had a player drafted. And Woodrow Wilson and Rankoka's Valley and Pennsauken have all had 7. So I thought that was interesting. I might write up some stats on that in my next 10 observations. But anyway, yeah, he's certainly a guy who I think could be there at the end of the first round. And like you said, he checks all the boxes as well. I think he's going to be a good one.
Yeah, so for me, he does check all the boxes. You look at, and it's not. We talked about it on the last podcast on Tuesday that some of these edge rushers in this class were not very productive in terms of raw numbers at the college level, and that doesn't mean that they're not going to be good NFL players. But I think you need to do a little bit more digging when that happens. You don't have that worry with Ezeiruaku. He was very productive, especially last year, 16.5 sacks, ton of tackles for loss. If you're worried, all right, but it came at Boston College, like what level of competition? All right, he goes to the Senior Bowl, he aces that, goes to the combine, has the best 3-cone, has the best short shuttle, very bendy player. Where some of these, like that's where I talk about flavor. Like some of these guys, not super bendy, they have the raw speed. Like a James Pierce, raw speed, ran a 4.4. Like that's not Ezeiruaku. He actually never ran the 40 in this pre-draft process, which I kind of like when guys do that a little. Like, don't put out a number there that like the other numbers are really good. And sometimes the 40 is not the greatest indicator. So, but I look at him and I just think he's answered every question in this process. I think he'd be a really fine pick in the first round.
Do you know that the player with the most college sacks that the Eagles have ever drafted went to Boston College?
Okay.
Mike Mamula had like 44 sacks at BC. And then, had an okay career, 31 and a half sacks in 6 seasons. But I think the good thing about the Senior Bowl and the Combine is any questions anybody has about level of competition, you have that chance to answer them, especially the Senior Bowl going up against really good players. And by all accounts, you were not the Senior Bowl this year, were you? Or were you?
No, it's before the
right after it was right after. Yeah. He's certainly a possibility. He's in the mix.
I do like going to Mobile. I haven't been in the Senior Bowl in a few years. It's tough when the Eagles are good because their season goes a little longer and they don't have as high of a draft pick. So it's like it takes a while for people to get into draft mode in Philly. But Senior Bowl, it used to be great, man. Like you used to be able to just like watch practice with coaches, with scouts, and now they've kind of booted us a little bit. You can still, but it's still valuable. And I know the Eagles value it. They've drafted a lot of Senior Bowl players in recent years.
Yeah. Good stuff.
All right. Another name.
Be going back for a while. Just a hunch.
Well, you never know. James Pierce, another edge rusher from Tennessee. Different than Ezeiruaku, right? Ran that 4.4. There's one thing with James Pierce I wanted to get into with you, and it's tough because I don't know James Pierce. I don't really have much information on him. One of the things, whether it's true or not, that you hear about James Pierce is that like maybe, not that it's like a personality thing, but maybe like doesn't love football. Like every scouting report says like teams really want to meet with him and talk to him. And not saying that we know anything about him or don't know anything about him, but this is one part of the process that is really tough for outsiders to understand and to be able to handicap this whole thing.
Yeah, and it's something that Nick, it's that like when they draft a guy, the first thing Nick usually says is he loves ball. And I think, the Eagles have certainly drafted guys who don't, and it's been obvious right from the get-go. Fireman Danny is a great example. He had no passion for the game, and he might have had talent somewhere. He was pretty good at Baylor, but I think they spent a lot of time on that. And how do you find out? You talk to guys, high school coaches, and you talk to their teammates, their college teammates, talk about guys they played with. So I think that's a really important thing for Howie and Nick is how committed they are, because you can't fake it in this sport. Maybe there's other sports you can. Maybe you can play baseball if you don't particularly have a burning passion for playing baseball, but you can't fake it in football. So I think that's important to them.
It certainly is. And it's like, it's always tough when that becomes a part of the evaluation, or if there's like actual character concerns, because they're doing all the homework on it and each team is going to view it differently. And each team is going to view their situation differently in terms of whether or not they can absorb that player and get the most out of them. So that part of whenever there's something like that, it makes it tough. Like we can watch every single snap those guys play, just like the teams can, but most folks who are in the media or fans are not going to be able to call their high school coach and say, "Hey, what's he like as a dude?" Though, and they'd be really annoyed, I think, if everyone started calling them. But I think that's like, and that's something I always hear with Pierce, because he's been a name that's been really popular, and I just don't know.
And one thing that makes it tougher is, like it used to be at the combine, you could interview a guy and talk to him about that, and really get a good feel for.
As a reporter, you're saying?
No, as a team, like a team
Okay.
could spend time with a guy, but these guys are coached so well before the combine how to answer certain questions. And I think it's a relatively new thing, like in the last 10 years or so, where you're not getting authentic answers. You're getting the answers that the guy was coached. And that's something that I think, teams try to find ways to break through that. But I mean, Howie's talked about how these guys they're so well prepared for the combine interviews, for all the interviews, by their agents. And I mean, there's actually, these guys get trained on how to do the different drills at the combine. They also get, trained on how to, that's a good note from Alex there. They're also trained on how to answer these questions. And it's hard sometimes to get an honest answer. Alex tells us that James Pierce was my first pick in my way too early 2025 mock draft from last April.
Could happen. Where did he have the Eagles picking in that one?
I just go by. That's a good question. Does Alex, you have that in front of you? I just go by projected win, like the Vegas win totals in reverse, and then I just flip a coin. I go random for the ones that are even. But I think I had him. Yeah, do you have that in front of you, Alex? Let's see who. I'll find it. Who I had the Eagles.
I'm sure it was 26.
Okay. I did have him taking Keeley in one of those drafts, but in the first round.
Yeah.
But at least I had the name right.
You and I were joking earlier this week. I hope I'm not talking out of school here, but like you like doing the way too early mock draft. For all the curmudgeon talk about mock drafts, you actually like doing it a year early.
Yeah, because you're not even pretending that it's going to be accurate. You're just kind of like having fun and you also, it's like I do it before this year's draft. So if a team takes a quarterback, like I can't have them taking a quarterback again unless it's Arizona a few years ago. But yeah, I don't know. There's something fun about it, and looking back a year later and seeing how off I was. I know I had Shedeur as my number one pick, I think. Or was he my number two pick? Yeah, I don't know. I had him pretty high, but I guess that's not a real reach. I think he'll go pretty high.
Yeah, probably.
Anyway,
or he'll slide, and it'll be the talk of the draft.
It sure will. Wherever he goes, it will. They're retiring his number.
I saw that. I haven't read about that. It seems weird to me, but
they're retiring. I guess his number, Travis Hunter's number, and I guess Cordell Stewart fans are all upset, Steelers fans, whatever, because they never retired his number. He was a much more successful quarterback than Shedeur was at Colorado. So, what if they retired Bloom's number?
Jeremy Bloom?
Yeah,
I doubt that.
Maybe the Colorado ski team retired. Well, yeah, I don't know if you have numbers in skiing. Anyway,
yeah.
Back on the rails, Dave. Come on.
Yeah, it's my fault. Sorry. The last name I had on my list here from the last mock draft roundup was Jihaad Campbell, linebacker from Alabama. I do think that's unlikely. You could have talked me into a linebacker before they re-signed Zach Bond, but to use the 32nd pick on a linebacker, even though he has like some pass rush capability, that's a tough sell for me.
Yeah, I mean, he's an intriguing player, and he does a lot of things well. Yeah, I don't see it either, but he's a fascinating guy, and I'm curious what kind of career he'll have. But yeah, he's an interesting one. I don't know. If he's not going to be there at 32 anyway. I can't imagine. Never know. But if he is, it'd be interesting to see what Howie does. I think you're right. I can't imagine spending those kind of resources on that position in two different ways.
Yeah, it would surprise me. But like a player with those skills are intriguing, especially when you see what Vic Fangio got out of Zach Bond. So it's funny. I think there are other players later in the draft who have that dual threat ability, so to speak, but they're not as good, but you also wouldn't have to use a first round pick on them. It is fun in this draft, though. You have him, you have Campbell, who's kind of an edge rusher who's now playing off ball. And then you have Jalen Walker, who's one of the best edge rushers that used to play off ball. And they kind of like flip flopped, and they each kind of found their own home.
I mean, he's a really good run defender too. I don't think there's. I mean, I just think he's really good at everything, and so he's an intriguing guy. Another South Jersey guy, Timber Creek. I think he started Timber Creek and then went down to some sports factory in Florida, IMG or one of those. So it could be two South Jersey first rounders.
Does he count?
Yeah, he went to Timber Creek. I mean, there's a few guys that started out.
He went to IMG, yeah.
Yeah, he went to IMG.
Yeah, he started out at Timber Creek.
I think he only played 1 year at IMG.
Okay.
Now, was there ever a year where two South Jersey guys went the same year? Last time that happened was 2002. Brian McKinney was drafted by the Vikings from Woodbury out of Miami, and William Green, the running back from Boston College, Holy Spirit, was drafted in the first round by the Browns. So also happened in 97 with Tommy Knight from your alma mater, Cherokee, and Chris Canny, a couple cornerbacks. Yeah, two corners. Canny was from Eastern. So I got all the South Jersey stats here. 1984, Mike Rozier and Irving Fryer, who were teammates at Nebraska, were both drafted in the first round.
That's neat.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know. I find that stuff interesting. I know we have a lot of South Jersey listeners, so
we do. We also have people on the other side of the bridge and all over the world who are like, we do not.
No, I think they do. I think it's interesting stuff. Yeah.
Okay. I have the PFF mock draft simulator fired up. This is fun. Even if, I play with it all the time just to see the different combinations that pop up. Let's just plug it in. We'll start with the Eagles here, and we'll see who's available and what we would do with the options provided here. So we'll start the draft. Okay. So in front of me, I'll give you some of the top options here, and you tell me who you would pick at 32. Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
And PFF's rankings are a little wonky, so I'll just go through and find some names that I think are worthwhile.
Okay.
Kelvin Banks, tackle from Texas. Gray Zabel, offensive lineman from NDSU. Josh Connerly, tackle from Oregon. We have Derek Harmon from Oregon, defensive tackle. Maxwell Hairston, cornerback from Kentucky. Donovan Jackson, tackle from Ohio State. Darius Alexander, defensive
guys
tackle
named Donovan
from Toledo. Yeah, I think those are some of the top names here.
I think Connerly would be at the top of the list for me out of that group.
Okay, for me, it'd be Harmon easily. I love Derek Harmon. I don't get why he's not getting more like buzz in this draft.
Okay.
I think Connerly is solid. But I think if it came down to where would you land on that? So if you're talking offensive linemen, there are a few here. You have Kelvin Banks, you have Gray Zabel, you have Connerly. Those are kind of the three top ones available. If you had to pick one of those three, you would go Connerly.
Yeah. I mean, Zabel's an interesting guy. I think he's got a lot of upside. He might be my number 2 on that list, but Banks is good too. So I think all three are going to be in that late first, early second range.
Yeah, Banks is interesting. So many of these offensive linemen are like, do you view them as a tackle, guard? Some guys are like, maybe they can even play center. And I think that really varies from team to team too. I think I mentioned it with edge rushers, but I think the same holds true for offensive linemen. Like, where do teams view them? Do they like the versatility? Do they want them to have one position? I think that varies as well.
Yeah, I mean, have the Eagles ever drafted an offensive lineman that didn't have positional versatility? I mean, they really value that.
Yeah, I mean, Andre Dillard.
Yeah. And see?
Yeah, I mean, if he was a great left tackle, it wouldn't have mattered.
Right.
But he didn't really have it, right? I mean, he couldn't play on the right side of the line, didn't really offer them anything as a guard. Even like a Jordan Mailata had the ability to flip sides of the football.
Yeah. Didn't they give Dillard some reps at guard at one point?
Yeah, I think so.
It did not go well.
I mean, Kelsey was never going to play anything other than center. That worked
I'm
out.
sure he could have played guard.
Maybe in a pinch.
I'll bet.
Neither here nor there, I suppose.
Yeah.
All right. So who are we picking here? I'll let you pick. Are you going Connerly?
Yeah, I'll go Connerly.
Okay. We'll pick Connerly, and then we'll get to the second round and see who we'd pair him with.
All right.
Okay. So now a few of the second round options here. Omar Norman Lott, defensive tackle from Tennessee, which is like kind of what I was saying with the defensive tackles. Even though I love a Derek Harmon, you can get one at 64 potentially. Kevin Winston Jr., the safety from Penn State. Elijah Arroyo, tight end from Miami. And I bet you they still have, Mason Taylor, tight end from LSU, who would be above him. Shamar Turner, defensive tackle from Texas A&M. Tate Ratledge from Georgia. Who do you want to go with here?
I'm going Mason Taylor.
Yeah, I love a Mason Taylor. I don't know if he'll be there at 64, but he might be my guy in the second round if they're going to go tight end.
If he's there, man, I'm snapping him up.
Okay, so we agree on this one. We'll go Mason Taylor. Do want to point out we're now 2 picks in and we haven't gone with a defensive lineman. Okay, so we have.
I just want Jason Taylor to be at practice. I think it'd be fun to.
That would be fun, actually.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Femi Oladejo from UCLA in the third round? That's not a bad third round pick.
Okay.
I'm going through because some of once you get in the third round, they're a little wonky. How about Andrew Makuba, safety from Texas? That would be a solid third round pick.
I love him. Yeah.
You like him?
Yeah, I do.
Tate Ratledge, Georgia's still there. They have Harold Fannin here in the third round. He's someone who we haven't talked about a lot, but if you're looking for a tight end who might make some sense. Bowling Green connection.
True.
With Scott Leffler.
Those words have never been spoken before.
Bowling Green connection. Yeah, I mean, it's true, though. And I think Fannin in the third round would be decent value.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. We'll just pick one more here. Who do you want to go with? We'll go Makuba?
Yeah.
Okay. That would be crazy if they went 3 picks without taking a defensive lineman. But it's possible. All right. I'm going to refresh this, and we'll do one more first round.
If that's where the board leads them, that's...
Yeah, you're right. It would be hard. It's still hard to believe, though, that they would end up without a defensive lineman that early.
Yeah.
All right. We'll enter another draft. We'll just do the first 2 picks this time. Man, so in this one, the picks right before them, gosh, in the 20s. So here are the players who go in the 20s of note. Mike Green, Walter Nolan, Kenneth Grant, Malachi Starks, Tyler Booker, Colston Loveland, Nick Eamon-Warry, James Pierce, Nick Scorton, Kelvin Banks Jr., and Derek Harmon right before them to the Chiefs. Harmon next to Chris Jones is unfair. But that would be a little tricky. This would be a bad situation for them to be in. You'd be left with maybe Donovan Jackson, Darius Alexander, Maxwell Hairston. Connerly is there for you. Gray Zabel.
Right. I mean, it's boring to keep saying Connerly. If those defensive guys are all gone, I mean, certainly if how he could get out of that spot, you got to find somebody who wants to get into that spot, and I'm not sure that would be the case. But yeah, that's certainly possible. You could have that kind of run on defensive players in the 20s.
Yeah, it's possible. And like this would probably be like maybe a trade down situation, but you need someone to be able to get in there. And it's possible if someone's going after Milrow or Jackson Dart, a team might want to get in there. And in a case like this, if the board starts to fall this way, that would be an easier pill to swallow for fans if, some of the names that we've talked about so much over the last couple of months just aren't there.
We haven't talked about Jackson Dart, and there's really no reason to. But, I mean, for us, but, boy, I think he's going to go before – I think he's going to go earlier than people expect. you just see it with quarterbacks, and I think he's going to be pretty good. And they just get overdrafted every year. We'll see.
It seems like Milroe's the guy kind of rising is the term that gets used, but a guy who might end up going a lot earlier than people are expecting to.
Been a lot of buzz around Milroe.
Yeah. And that's good if you're an Eagles fan, because you want those guys to end up potentially
pushing people down.
Yeah, either they get drafted high and they push players down, or they don't get drafted and then they're a team sitting there like, if the Browns are sitting there and they go, well, we didn't draft the quarterback yet, we want to get back up into the first round and take one and get that fifth-year option, that you can really get some extra value. And if you're the Eagles, you can drop down a few picks.
I just don't know why the Browns would have any interest in drafting a quarterback. They got Kenny P. Come on now.
Yeah, sorry, Kenny. All right, let's take a break. On the other side, we want to share some draft memories, and we have a bunch of questions to answer from all you guys coming up.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we've got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store and NissanUSA.com today.
We are back on the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan, Reuben Frank, and Dave Zangaro. Rube, you brought up the idea that let's talk some draft memories. You've covered what draft will this be for you? Do you know?
My first one was, I think I mentioned this, was the Keith Jackson draft in '88 in a small room in the first floor of the Vet. It was like an auxiliary locker room for like soccer teams or something. There was maybe 20 people in there, 12 rounds, I think, in one day. A guy with a whiteboard and a marker writing down each pick that each team made, no TV coverage. Yeah, it was different.
What's the biggest surprise you've ever seen covering an Eagles draft?
Oh, that's a great question. 26-year-old firefighter. I mean, that's up there. I mean, we didn't know yet just how, disinterested he was in the playing offensive line in the NFL, but it was a shocking pick at the time. I mean,
an older prospect, and that's at certain positions, the older prospects do give you pause a little bit because they're like grown men competing with teenagers in a lot of cases.
Right.
And it was like one of our first lessons in this city about that.
Yeah. I mean, the Jalen pick was as shocking as any pick. Carson was still, playing pretty well. I mean, coming off, he had the injury issues, but I mean, they just give him a contract and, so that was, I was stunned at that one.
Yeah. And if you remember in 2019, that was when Carson led them to 4 wins down the stretch to get into the playoffs. And then he gets knocked out of that game really early by Jadeveon Clowney. Jadeveon Clowney, did he completely alter the trajectory of Eagles football?
Interesting. Yeah, that could be one of those, what's that game you play like with the hypothetical scenarios? That's true. Because Carson was playing well enough that like if he had a decent game that day, and even if they lost, if he played pretty well, and he was playing well that year, I don't know if you draft Jalen Hurts. So if not for that hit, it's certainly possible that Carson might still be their quarterback. Probably not.
Yeah. Well, I remember when we did it was during COVID and we were all trying to find something to do. We did the Philly villains, and the one of the Eagles villains was Jadeveon Clowney, which is such like a snapshot, a moment in time there, because ultimately no one even really remembers that now. But yeah, at the time, Carson had a really good end to that 2019 season. He willed them in the playoffs with a bunch of receivers that just weren't very good. Yeah. Then they drafted Jalen.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. That would be a fun story to write, just the 10 biggest Eagles draft surprises. Maybe I'll work on that.
I like that. Yeah. Anything else that stands out? I mean, Marcus Smith was a surprise, right?
It was.
I did not cover that draft, but
I mean, and John Harris, like that was so surprising. John Harris, he was driving to his friend's house in Long Island to watch the draft during the first round because he's like, well, I'm not going to get drafted to like the fourth round at the earliest. So he starts getting calls and it's like, what are you talking about? I'm not getting drafted in the first round. He's like, yeah, that was a surprising one. Both those guys just, yeah, and did not work out well for either one. One of my clearest memories was in 2015 when Chip was doing the draft, and we all thought he was going to trade up and try to get Mariota.
I mean, gosh, that had such a stranglehold on local talk radio for months.
Yeah, I thought he was going to do it, and I thought it'd been the dumbest thing because, I mean, that's the year they picked Nelly.
Yeah.
Right. So where did they pick that? I mean, he would have had to give away the franchise, but he would have done it. Like, he didn't know what he was doing as GM. And he wasn't the worst coach ever. He wasn't the best. But as a GM, I mean, he was disaster. And I really thought he was going to do it until that second pick went off the board and the Titans took him. I thought Chip was going to do everything he could to just mortgage the future for a guy that turned out to be okay. Still in the league, was here for a while.
Howie would never admit it, but there had to be a very small part of him, or maybe not that small part of him, that really enjoyed signing Marcus Mariota later in his career.
Yeah, I always liked him, just not as much as Chip. But yeah.
Well, there was also some stories have come out about, Chip wanted Taylor Hart way earlier than
second round,
third round. I think it was. He ended up getting to the fifth round. He just didn't have an idea of value and where guys were going to fall, because that's one thing that Howie's very good at. It's not just about taking the best players. It's about maximizing the value of the draft. He's really good at that.
Yeah, he is.
It doesn't mean the players are always going to land, but he's going to try to maximize.
Yeah, his understanding of the value of each pick in relation to each player is next level. And I don't think anybody's as good at that as him. And I think he's gotten better at it too. And I think that's reflected in their last 4 drafts.
One of my favorite things is after a player gets drafted, now there are Zoom calls. They used to be just conference calls. The Eagles PR staff is pretty good about getting players available soon after they get drafted. And I still remember talking to Jordan Mailata right after he got drafted in 2018. And I asked him, what did you know about football before the last few months of being in the States and being down in Florida and learning it? And that's where he said, mate, next little as peanuts, or whatever he said that became his saying for the next few years. But those are always fun. The first time we get the chance to talk to a kid 15 minutes after he gets drafted.
Yeah, and some of these guys, you can't get them to stop talking, and some are just so overwhelmed that...
Or there's a party going on in their house or
a lot of times
at the restaurant they're at or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always a fun experience, just kind of that first exposure to them and just kind of getting to know their personality a little bit. That is interesting.
Any other draft memories you have that really stand out?
I mean, there's so many. We could do this for hours, but the conference call you just mentioned reminded me of when the Eagles drafted 2 running backs from the same college back to back from Mississippi State, Kevin Bowie and Fred McCrary. Fred McCrary ended up having a long career. I think he won a Super Bowl. He was teammates with Barrett in '95 here, but Kevin Bowie was supposed to be the better player. He had big numbers in college, and he was so mad at where he got drafted. I think they were both 6 rounders. He thought he was going to be like a second or third rounder. And he just got on the conference call and just started talking about how pissed he was at everybody for not drafting him and how he was going to show him. And he was angry. I think he was also angry that Fred went 2 picks ahead of him, or the pick ahead of him. And they were roommates. They just passed the phone to each other during the conference calls. And Kevin Bowie, I don't know if he even ever played in the NFL. Might have played a few games, but yeah, there's so many memories, and just how much it's changed over the years. I remember talking to Barry Gardner. The Eagles drafted Donovan and Barry Gardner with the first 2 picks in '99, and they had played against each other in Chicago and Pop Warner. And I remember calling Barry up and talking to him about Donovan, about what it was like playing against him. Imagine Donovan and like Pop Warner. How do you stop him? You're like a 12-year-old kid here. Now, I remember when the Eagles drafted Coy Detmer, and they already had Ty Detmer on the roster. And the PR I think it was Derek Boyko, put the both of them on a conference call together. And Coy said something, and Ty's just telling him to shut up. That was funny. So, yeah. I remember when they drafted AJ Feely, I called Joey Harrington up. And he spoke really highly of AJ, and I learned later that there was no love lost between the two of them, but he gave me a good interview.
And that's all that matters, right?
That's all that counts.
All right, let's get to some questions. If you have one for us, it's eagleeye@nbcuni.com. That's eagleeye@nbcuni.com. Let me get that on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, we have that QR code up there for you. The first question here is from Nathan. Hey guys, I'm currently driving to work down here in New Zealand. It's about 7:50 Friday, the 11th, and I had to pull over to type this. On the latest pod, around 20 minutes in, did I hear Rube say the word lineage as lineage, a 2-syllable pronunciation? Never heard it said that way before. Surprised you didn't pull him up on that, Dave. Anyway, thanks for the pod.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard it too.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get into a linguistics discussion in that particular moment.
I don't think that's linguistics. It's just me being stupid. I remember, for some reason, there's just different words that there's just different words that we, have trouble with. For me, there's a lot of them, but I remember asking Jeff Garcia about the lineage from Joe Montana to Steve Young to him, and like how they had all these, like they were Hall of Famers, and Garcia made a few Pro Bowls, and how like he thought he was going to be the next guy to star for the 49ers for years. Didn't work out that way. And I asked him about that when he signed with the Eagles in '06, and he looked at me and said, "Don't you mean lineage?"
So this is not a new thing.
No, I've been doing this for 2 decades now. So yes, we all have those words that we just mispronounce. So
the confidence with which you said it made me not question it, because I was like, maybe it's like, and I think it is like technically it is an alternate pronunciation. It's just not used.
Yeah, except when I'm talking to Jeff Garcia and on podcasts that are listened to in New Zealand. But I appreciate you pulling over on the way to work and messaging us.
Well, once I read that, I was like, we got to get that on, because I was wondering too. But and I even looked it up after the pod before I got the email just to make sure. It was kind of rattling around in my brain.
Is there a word that you either just can't spell? You have to you spell it wrong every time, or you pronounce it wrong? I mean, I think we all have those blind spots.
There are words I really have to think about. Like in my head, I say Wednesday instead of Wednesday. Like to be able to type it or write it.
Wednesday is an alternate pronunciation.
I don't say it, but I have to say it in my head like that to spell it correctly.
Okay.
That was the first one that came to mind.
Yeah.
Next one from Jack. Hi, Dave and Rue. I've been looking at the picks we have and trying to figure out exactly what we're going to do. Futile, I know. Or futile, I know. I have a theory. We will trade down from 32 to give ourselves an early second-round pick, which we will use for an edge, and also trade up from 64 to get a mid-second round tight end, as I believe those are 2 of our most pressing needs. I think we stay at 96 to pick a defensive tackle, and we simply draft the mid-round guy to make the most of the chances that Carter has being double-teamed will provide him. Those 3 picks plus a 4th-round safety to compete for a starter role will be the solid start to the draft, in my humble, somewhat uninformed opinion. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it's going to be tough to find a 4th-rounder, a rookie at any position who's going to be a starter. That's rare. You got a guy that late who can start as a rookie. It happens, but rarely. I think it's going to be tough to trade out of 32 to trade down. I just don't know. And look, if anybody can do it, Howie can do it. I just don't know if people want that pick. I don't know if people are in a hurry to get into that 32nd spot. The positions, I agree. I think tight ends are really there's some intriguing ones, there's some good ones, and certainly the other positions are positions that we know they are interested in, that they're going to address somewhere. So I don't know if, I mean, he's going to try. I'm sure he's been trying to get out of 32, but I just don't know if he can do it.
I actually think there's a decent chance that because the quarterbacks are what matters there.
Yeah.
The team's going to trade up for a quarterback, and I think it might line up. And if you remember, the last time they were in this position, they did trade out of the first round, and then they ended up trading back up because that year they really had to trade pretty far down. The Ravens came a long way up, and which is why they got so much out of it. But yeah, I could see a scenario where the Eagles trade down from 32. They end up at what, like 35, 34, somewhere around there. They pick up an extra early day 3 pick, and then they use that pick to move up from 64, and you end up with 2 picks in between your original 2 picks. I could see that.
It's possible. Sure. I just think it's be tough.
Okay.
But I would certainly try to do that.
Yeah, it all hinges on the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Really. Like that's what matters there. This is what I promised on the last pod. So if everyone's been waiting and you're on the edge of your seats and you're like, you promised us some questions about the kickoff rules, here we go. I have a few of them. First one is Tony. I was wondering why, if the NFL sees an issue with the number of touchbacks, why it wouldn't make more sense for the new rule to move the starting point for a kickoff 5 yards backward instead of moving the starting point for the offense 5 yards forward.
Logical.
Is logical, but I think the NFL they think that this will incentivize teams to not kick it into the end zone, to make teams field those kicks as opposed to, kicking it into the end zone.
Logical.
Oh, you're not into this.
Oh no, I'm really into talking about kickoffs for the next 20 minutes with you, Dave. Let's do it.
All right, Matthew. The rule change from the 30 to 35-yard line seems very significant to me. I do think it will achieve more kicks going into the field of play. We haven't had a scary kick returner in so long. I stopped to think about the kick returners of past years. It all feels like running backs. Why? Is this another position like linebacker previously that we don't really value? Because I'm immediately already thinking about Dallas and Kevontae Turpin being a problem. Any thoughts about the kick returner position or ideas for who could be a threat here? Obviously, I don't want a starter to get hurt out there, but I'm not sure guys like Aniyah Smith are going to be difference makers for us.
Well, yeah, I mean, they've had some good kick returners. I mean, I think Avery Williams is the obvious name.
Yeah, they signed him. He's listed as a return specialist.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be doing both. He averaged like 27 something last year. All the numbers were up all over the kickoff return numbers. So like what used to be 27 is kind of means something different now. But he's going to be the guy. At least if he makes the team, they're going to, which I think he's got a pretty good chance to.
Yeah, I think you're right. Next one from Dylan. This year at the league meeting or in past years, was there any consideration of simply removing the kickoff altogether or giving the kickoff team the option to choose to spot the ball at, say, the 25-yard line and starting the play from scrimmage? I think it's strange how much the league is focused on manipulating this usually uneventful play rather than using the time on the clock for a few more offensive plays each game.
I mean, they want the play to exist, and they want to make it, as exciting but safe as possible. So I don't want to see it eliminated. It's a different, potentially exciting play that I like having it in the game. Yeah, I would want to do that.
Yeah, and I think it was trending that way, right? Like if everything's just a touchback, you get to the point where, well, let's just start at 25 and what are we doing here?
Yeah.
The idea was to try to save this play. And the league is talking out of both sides of its mouth a little bit because they want to make it safe, but inherently it's adding a play that is dangerous. And even though it's less dangerous, it's an extra play and guys could get hurt. they talked about, how the percentage of concussions on kickoffs is no longer higher than in a regular play, but there are still concussions, right? Like there's
Right.
still those head blows. But I do think the league wants to keep it because special teams are a way for young players to see the field and to make a name for themselves. So,
And I think the league just wants people watching every play. I mean, that turns into ratings and that turns into revenue. So, I mean, if you eliminate it, I guess they'd still watch every play, but it's a different kind of play that adds a little spice to the game, a little juice. You have the potential for big plays. You have that all the time, but when you see a guy kind of turn the corner and get into the open field on a kickoff return or a punt return, I mean, that's it's unexpected and it's it's exciting. So hopefully they keep it. And I think they're going to keep tweaking it, but I don't think they'll ever get rid of it.
Yeah, I mean, the all the work that they've done on it the last few years tells you they're not getting rid of it. They're going to find a way to keep it. Yeah. If they ever did eliminate the kickoff, though, when would they play the Rocky music at the link?
I don't have an answer for you on that. Okay. I don't know. But
do you think Jake Elliott waits for it to be over? Do you think he times it with the music? At this point, he's been doing it so long.
I don't know, but I could see you writing a story on that.
I might have to ask him. I can talk to Braden Mann too, because he's been doing some kickoffs as well.
There was a Monday night game in Baltimore. I mean, in Miami. It was a crazy, wild game. It was the game where Correll Buckhalter had that incredible falling backwards, football around the pylon. Remember that play? There's that incredible, I think it was George Reynolds photo from the Daily News of Buck. And it was originally ruled that he was out of bounds and it was reviewed. It was a back and forth game. It was 5 lead changes. It was down in Miami and the Eagles ended up winning. And so they were down 3 with 4 minutes left. And they started playing the Rocky music in Joe Robbie Stadium.
Wow.
What are you doing? And
that's crazy.
And there were a ton of Eagles. There were more Eagles fans at that game than I've ever seen anywhere, other than Eagles games in Philly. It was all Eagles fans because Miami wasn't very good that year, and Eagles were. And they played the Rocky music, and we all looked at each other, and the Eagles just drove down the field and won the game. So yeah, I don't know. That's when I never really understood. I wonder if the stadium music guy, he just had no idea what he was doing, or if they were trying to make mock the Eagles because the Dolphins had just scored. Maybe that's a story I should work on.
Yeah, I like that. You want to do one more?
Yeah, let's do one more.
Last one from Julian. Dave, first off, happy birthday. Thank you. Secondly, your comment from several weeks back about liking Willie Lampkin as a prospect got me looking up his highlights, and the idea has been living in my head rent-free ever since then. What an intriguing prospect. I think he could be an outstanding fullback given his body type and athletic ability. I also read that he was a 47-0 state champion heavyweight wrestler in high school. That is incredibly impressive. Yeah, Willie Lampkin, fun prospect. Don't even know if he's going to be drafted, but yeah, he's intriguing to me too.
And what school did he go to?
Willie Lampkin, North Carolina. Let's see. I want to find his. Sorry, I want to find his measurables here.
Oh yeah,
Willie Lampkin from North Carolina. He is 5'10", on a good day, 279.
Sean McDermott, he likes drafting wrestlers, so he might be a Buffalo Bill.
That's not bad.
Sean McDermott was big time high school. He was a national champion in like AAU wrestling.
Yeah, you think a guy like that would like to tush push, but
he'd be fun to watch training camp. I'll tell you that.
You got any final words before we wrap this one up today?
No, a week to go. Can't wait. And we'll be doing a bunch of podcasts next week. It's going to be a fun week.
Should be a lot of fun. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. For Rube, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye, presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.